Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And this program, I'm so excited about this program. I love all my guests, but this guest is a fellow C-suite network person, and there's just something about my fellow C-suite folks that I just love talking to. Like I said, all my guests are fantastic, but there is just a little something different about C-Suite Network. So please join me in welcoming Bob Pizzini to our program today. Welcome, Bob. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Deb. Thank you. I think C-Suite folks have the gift to gab, to say the least.
That's it. Well, and when we get on our group calls, it's everybody talking. I mean, it's always great fun. But more importantly, great information, great knowledge, great skill levels. And I love sharing that because they do have such important information to share. And that's why we're going to have so much fun talking with you. So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this.
Sure.
So Robert Pizzini, Bob, is the managing partner and chief executive officer of iFLY Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving. He brought this multi-million-dollar technology to Virginia Beach in 2015. In 2018, iFLY Virginia Beach was awarded the Chamber of Commerce Small Business of the Year. In 2019, Bob launched Elevate Your Leadership, a leadership experience that refreshes and energizes seasoned executives, develops new leaders, and builds high-performing teams. In 2022, he authored his first book, Elevate Your Leadership: How to Develop, Maintain, and Advance Lifelong Leadership. His efforts earned the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce Leadership Award. Now, there's a reason why he is such a good leader. He retired from the U.S. Navy in 2010 after 26 years of service in Navy Special Operations as a Master Explosive Ordnance Disposal, which is an EOD technician, and an EOD officer. He completed a combat tour with the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, Arabian Peninsula, and Balad, Iraq. His personal decorations include that little thing called the Bronze Star. So again, Bob, welcome. And of course, first and foremost, thank you so much for your service to our country.
Well, you're welcome, Deb, and it's an honor. It was an honor to serve.
And I always love knowing how my guests got to where they are today. And of course, we're going to be talking about that throughout the whole program because that really is very integral. But tell us a little bit more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Sure. So kind of the quick version. As a young man, I grew up watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau. I don't know if you recall that or not.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
This little girl from Colorado went, ooh, that looks scary.
Yeah. So so this little boy from Kenosha, Wisconsin looked at it and said, I want to do that. That looks cool. And, I was all of 12 years old. And so I became a scuba diver at the age of 12 and worked at the local dive shop, and diving really became my life in my teen years. And while I was in high school, I discovered this thing called Navy diving or Navy divers. And was leaning towards enlisting in the Navy anyway at that point in my life. And I enlisted in 1984 when I graduated high school. About a year later, in 1985, I completed what's called second-class diver training in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. A defining moment in my life at the age of 19. Now here I am, what we call a barrel-chested U.S. Navy deep sea diver. And that put in motion the rest of my career. So Navy diving led to Navy EOD. So Navy EOD technicians, think bomb tech, cut the red wire, cut the blue wire. Bomb technicians. Underwater, on the surface, in all environments. And that's why Navy EOD personnel are considered special operations personnel, because we do operate underwater, we operate on the surface, we operate in the desert. I deployed to Iraq. And we have what are called all the mobility skills. So we parachute, we fast rope and rappel out of helicopters. We have all the different diving modalities. So that was, so Navy EOD was the brunt of my career, 18, 19, 20 years of my 26-year career. And I retired in 2010. I contracted for a friend of mine. He had a wonderful business in special operations contracting. I did that for 5 years while I developed iFLY Virginia Beach, the business plan, the concept, and acquiring the resources, doing what one needs to do. And at the same time, I had to learn how to spell the word business, because when you do 26 years in the military, unless you're in supply and logistics, business functions, profit and loss statement, balance sheet,
it's just not part of your world.
It's not part of what you do. Exactly. So I had to, but the one thing that Navy EOD really trained me to be very good at is learning. We can we can prioritize our learning. What do I need to learn now? And how do I prioritize my learning? Anyway, so that Navy EOD career really gave me the confidence to put in motion what is now iFLY Virginia Beach. So indoor skydiving took me about 5 years to get to build the business. We built it from the ground up, and 4 or 5 years into this business, we just finished our 8th operating year. So about 4 or 5 years into this business, I was looking for leadership for my team. I have 40 people on my team, 6 people at the management leadership level. And I wanted to develop leadership amongst my management team. And I just could not find the type of training that I had in the military. This bare bones, here are the big nuggets of leadership that you should learn now and never forget. And no matter how crazy things get, you come back to these basics. Like General Mattis says, be brilliant at the basics. You come back to these things. Anyway, I couldn't find that type of training for my team. So I developed my own training platform, if you will. I delivered it to my team, and they were very receptive. They said, where has that been, for the last 5 years? They said, you should really take this to market. And other people in the business world saw what I was doing, and they recommended take it to market. So in addition to iFLY Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving and all the fun we're having, I'm really having fun having this discussion with you, for example, and where this discussion is going to go, because all things leadership and leading teams and developing individuals and developing teams, that's really, for me, that's my sweet spot. That's what I enjoy. I hope I answered that.
You did. I love it. And of course, one of the things that I think about, as you were talking through your bio, and of course, all military to varying degrees is dangerous. Sure. And obviously, depending on what you do, it's incredibly dangerous, and can ramp up at any point in time. I mean, I have a cousin who is in the, he's in the Air Force. It's okay. We still love him. And he was
best chow halls in all the services.
He was just deployed for 6 months. And all of these things. I mean, but you decided you were going to go after things that went boom. So how is it that you decided to do that? Because 99.999% of anybody else runs the other direction, and you went like a fireman, have to run in toward that, and so what made you decide to do that?
Sure. So I think what happens is, there's this type A personality that we're all familiar with. And I would say 80 to 90% of people in the EOD profession, men and women, by the way. So we have women in Navy EOD, not many, but we do have them. And so do the other services. But there is this drive that we have to, number one, be a contributing member of a team at a very high level. If you want me to carry the water, I'll carry the water. If you want me to be the one who's going to go down there and figure out which wire to cut, then I'll be the one to go down there. But everybody on the team has a critical role. And we developed that team competency. So I was very attracted to that. The other thing is, we problem solve at a very high level. When you and your team confront, first we have to search for and locate the device, or
Right.
oftentimes people will call and say, there's an explosive device here, picture Ukraine right now. And then we have to identify the device, and then we have to use what's called render safe procedure, or different techniques to defeat the device, or just simply through high order detonation destroy the device. But that's problem solving, all the way up to and including nuclear weapons. And I was the officer in charge of a nuclear weapons team for several years. And in high school, I never ever thought that I would be doing mathematical functions to determine, radiation levels, whether it's U-239, U-235, or plutonium. And here I am doing that with my team in austere and sometimes non-permissive, or what are called hostile environments. So that challenge at a very high level, combined with the physicality of the job, I think are things that were very appealing to me.
And you've mentioned several times one of the words that I think is so important, doesn't matter where we are, and that's the word team. And I think what we see in so many businesses is everybody's in it for themselves. And I think it's gotten worse to some degree because of COVID. We hear about the people who are doing just the bare minimum to get by, to keep their job. They've already quit in their head.
Quiet
all
quitting.
Of these things. And obviously you can't do that in the military, or if you do, you don't last long. But why is it so important that we absolutely, and I don't care, if you're a volunteer in a church group, or with your kids, or, all these things, why is teamwork so important?
Well, I'll give a couple of kind of references, and I can't remember who quoted these things. I should probably look this up one day, but there's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a group, go with a team.
Right.
And just from my life's experience, I can say that is certainly a true concept. The other one is, most of the great things that were done in this world, for example, Thomas Edison and the light bulb, it wasn't Thomas Edison. Right. It was Thomas Edison leading a team of inventors, but he's largely credited for it. So the point there is, most of the great things that have happened in terms of technology and medicine and just general advancement in our society were the result of teamwork. So the sooner somebody can understand that, and the sooner we can put ego aside and say, I'm going to be a contributing member of this team, the sooner your value really goes up.
Right. Now, of course, teams need leaders, which is what you work with people on. And I love this concept because there's so many different ideas about what it is. So how do you define what a leader is?
So I have a personal definition of leadership, and I think everybody who's in a leadership role should create their own personal definition. Your definition could be different than mine. As a matter of fact, it's better if it is, because it gives us a more diverse way to approach leading others. But in 2 words, my personal definition of leadership is enabling others. And then the longer version of that is to use my, to use my education, my training, and my experience to enable others to accomplish their objectives. And again, so when I have that definition of leadership in my conscious mind, I can check myself and say, am I leading right now, or am I deviating from what I think leadership is? And if I share that definition with others, they can also say, hey, Bob, you're deviating right now.
Right.
When you develop that bond and that trust, and you can accept constructive criticism from your teammates, you can really go far.
Right. And so many people think that a leader is in it for their glory. And, let's be honest, there is that. But I think what is so important about your definition is to realize that when everyone succeeds, you also succeed. You make more money, you sell more cookies. I mean, you
Sure.
you detonate that bomb.
That's right.
And all of those things. And so I think that's what really makes the true leader is to realize it is about lifting everyone up.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Success, my job is to make sure that everybody on my team is successful. And as long as I focus on that, another thing I say in leadership is, what can I do for you? And there's a lot written about servant leadership, and people call it its own style and everything else. For me, servant leadership is simply those 6 words. What can I do for you? I'm not going to do your job for you,
right?
But what can I do to enable you to better do your job? And is that training? Is that equipment? Is that more manpower? There's all these things that we have to focus on as leaders to enable others.
Right. And one of the things in your book that you talk about are the various styles of leadership. And I haven't done it recently, but I'm sure if I were to Google that, there's like 11 gazillion that come up. And what I loved in the book is you talk about, there are these various styles and you define them and you pick just a handful. But we as leaders have to be fluid and go in and out of the various styles. And I think that's where we see leaders fail, is when they think I have to be this type of leader. And I mean, obviously military would be a great example of that, where you have the true person in charge, whatever. And ultimately there does have to be somebody that, to borrow a phrase, the buck does stop here, right?
For sure. Yes.
But there's so many other ways. So let's kind of talk about some of the other various leadership styles and where they can best serve your teams.
Sure. So within leadership styles, and again, books written on that, Google leadership styles, you'll find more information than you can consume. But what's important is that you very consciously select a leadership style that you're comfortable with, that you kind of naturally adapt to. And again, it's one that you can keep in your conscious, so you can know that you're applying it, or you can know when you should apply it. Or equally as important is when you should not apply that particular leadership style. And then kind of, as you alluded to, really, when I hate to use the word mastery or expertise, but when you become very, very good and very comfortable in your role as a leader, you're navigating between these different leadership styles constantly. You're blending them perhaps from time to time. So for me, coach is one of my preferred leadership styles, right? And what does a coach do? A coach observes. A coach knows the finer points of whatever the subject matter is. It doesn't mean the coach is an expert at that. I coach high school hockey, and every one of my high school hockey players could, run circles around me on the ice.
Right.
But my job is not to be better than them at their job. My job is to make them better, in this case, as hockey players. So the coaching style for me is very natural. It feels very good. I have a history of athletics, just growing up playing hockey and all the other sports. And I have coaches that I remember that were, had a very positive impact. And then I remember coaches who I thought, okay, well, I will never do that. I will never be like that.
Yeah, for whatever reason, that wasn't what they should have been doing.
Yeah, exactly. So coaching is one leadership style that I think is very important. Visionary is another. And of all the leadership styles that people pick, everybody should land on visionary, because as a leader, you have to set the vision. You have to set the cardinal direction, or let me say that a different way. You have to set the cardinal direction, and you set that cardinal direction through a clearly defined vision that is understandable and that you repeat often. Important things are worth repeating often, and the vision of an organization should be a very important thing. Whenever I get my team together, we repeat our vision statement all the time. Sometimes I'll just walk around and say, tell me what you think about our vision statement. Tell me our vision statement and tell me what does that mean to you? And so with leadership styles, I would say find 3, which is what I have. Participative is my other one. So I have coaching, visionary, and participative. I would say find at least 3 that you can, again, you keep it in your conscious. And when things happen throughout the day, you reflect on those and you say, should I be a coach right now? do I need to restate the vision, or should I get a group together and have a participative session?
Right. And what I like about the participative is when your team members feel that they are part of the process, even if it doesn't ultimately go their way, but when they feel that their voice was heard, that they were able to actually say, hey, Bob, what do you think about this? Or like you said, hey, Bob, you've kind of strayed.
Right.
Then, and we use the phrase, they buy in. And they do. I mean, you get that loyalty because they're, when you tell somebody this is what you're going to do, and I'm not even going to tell you why you're going to do it, you're just going to do it that way. People will probably do it, but they're going to go, eesh. But if you have, and obviously there are times and situations where you have to say, this is what you do.
Yeah. Directive. That's called directive. And that would be police, fire, EMS, or other dire situations.
Right. Yeah. And or even if it's just as simple as, okay, here is our procedure for putting together this piece of equipment. But when it's this fluid process, people really do think, hey, we are part of that team. And so you do get their loyalty.
Yeah, you do. It fosters that. And again, nothing is 100%, but my approach to the participation, if you will, in something I call voice versus vote, I want to hear from everybody. I want to hear from the newest person on the team, which sometimes that's where, some of the best ideas come from. I want to hear from everybody, but at the end of the day, it is not a democratic process.
Right. It is not a vote in most cases.
Right. The leader
choosing where you're going to have lunch ordered from. Sure. Choosing the next product you're going to go to market with. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Yeah. I will never. So when it comes to the lunch order, I will never make that decision. That goes out to the team, and you guys tell me what we're going to get. It's important that everybody's voice is heard. Now, oftentimes when their voice is heard, especially a newer person, they're expecting their voice to be acted on.
Right.
And when that doesn't happen, people there can be resentment, there can be disappointment, and organizations of all sizes. But in small to mid-sized organizations, especially, the leader has to have a discussion with everybody, which basically outlines what I'm talking about now. I want to hear from you. That doesn't mean we're going to do exactly what you're asking for or what you're recommending. And I have 3 ways to measure that input. The first question I ask is, I have 3 questions. The first question I ask is, if we implement whatever's being recommended, will that enhance the experience for the employee? Second question is, will it enhance the experience for the customer? And the third question is, will it enhance the bottom line?
Right. Which is, let's admit it, that is, that's what we have to always keep in mind.
We do. But, if you make the bottom line answer, priority number 1 versus how does it impact the employee experience and the customer experience?
Yeah, then you're overcharging, there's all
you could be doing more
things.
damage, right? You could be doing more damage in pursuit of the bottom line. So first of all, does it enhance the employee experience? Second, does it enhance the customer experience? Third, does it enhance the bottom line? If the answer is yes to all 3 of those, it's probably going to happen. If the answer is yes to 1 or 2 of those, which is usually the case, then there's more exploration necessary. And that's where, when somebody comes forth with a concept, often what you wind up implementing is not exactly what they recommended, but you got the team together and you took that kind of raw, good idea and you processed it into something that is very beneficial.
Right. And it's all about communication. If you don't go with somebody's idea or you do a variation of it, you need to tell them why, as opposed to just, no, can't do that. It goes back to, I think, a lot of times when we were kids, right? And you said, hey, I want to, can we do such and such? And mom or dad said, no. And even if we said, why not? Typically what a lot of the response was, because I said so. Right. And but when they take the time to say, okay, we couldn't do it because, then it was like, oh, okay, so you still valued my input, but I understand now why we couldn't do it. And we see that happen in business all the time, where we say, what if we do this? And if somebody says, okay, we, even if we've tried it and it didn't work, then it's okay. So tell me more. Maybe situations have changed.
Yeah, that one, right. I'm telling you, we tried it and it didn't work. When somebody says that an alarm goes off in my mind that says, well, we didn't get it right. We tried it and it didn't work. Something about what we did.
Why not?
Right. And yeah, we experience that in my organization frequently. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to try it again. And what are we going to change? What are we going to do differently? Because to not have sales is not an option.
No,
we have to have sales. So if we tried to sell item X or item Y and it didn't work, then we need to figure out a way to make it work.
Right. And to me, one of the worst ones that I would get when I was still in corporate America was, well, this is the way we've always done it.
Sure.
And to me, that was like, oh, no. Now, I mean, there were obviously valid reasons in many cases. It was making money, it was working, hopefully, all of those various things. But to just be shut down like that, I think that's the problem. And of course, what we're talking about there is those aren't good leaders.
Right.
Those in many cases are managers. And there is a big difference. Now, you can be both. But I think there are, and so let's talk about, the difference between a leader and a manager or management.
Sure. So this is a great discussion. And this is a discussion that I think leaders should have with their organizations on a regular basis. Again, things that are important are worth repeating on a regular basis. But management is, or my friend Marty Strong, who's written 2 wonderful books, he talks about leadership with a capital L, which is truly leading, and leadership with a small L, which is management. But to kind of, start very broadly, people want to be led, but they don't necessarily want to be managed, and certainly not micromanaged. So managing. So somebody's operating that piece of equipment, and when this gauge goes out of the preset parameter, you go notify your manager, and your manager is going to initiate the pre-approved fix for that particular situation.
Yes.
Right. So that's kind of management or leadership with a small L, as opposed to the person operating that piece of equipment is having some sort of difficulty, some issue, and they can't operate the equipment properly. Then the leader, capital L, needs to go in there and say, what is the issue? Why are you not performing to the standard that we expect? And there could be a million reasons for stuff.
Do we need to give you better training? Is all sorts of things.
Right. Yeah, it's the leader's job to flush all that out. And in another great discussion I had with Olivia Wagner and Bob Jordan, some other great authors, they talk about human leadership, right? So at the end of the day, we're human beings. We have wives, we have husbands, we have children, we have death in the family, we have a car that needs repair, we have a conference at the school with our kids teach. We have all of these things that take a person's mind away from the task when they're in the workplace. And as leaders, not managers, as leaders, we need to understand that about people and help them resolve, right? We enable others to accomplish their objectives. So we have to help them resolve that.
Right. And of course, we saw so much of that during COVID, especially during the early months when everything was shut down. I mean, people went to work on Friday and didn't go to work on Monday. I mean, it was just this whole, and it was only going to last 2 weeks. And we all went, but, and you mentioned in your book that you were very fortunate with iFLY, that because you contract with the military, you were deemed to be essential. And so you got to bring the team back in. But, the people who became leaders, I think, during a lot of this was very interesting, because they were the people who, would look at, say, somebody's background in Zoom and realize there's something off here. Or, they'd see the kids and go, oh my gosh, tell me about your son, and things like that. And the poor micromanagers who needed people to be under their thumbs, their little heads just exploded and they don't exist anymore. Right.
Yeah.
But I think one of there were good things that came out of COVID. And I think one of those was that we did find different leaders, and because the managers struggled, they wanted that control. And like we said, you can be both, but the leaders were the people who were the ones saying, what can we do to help you? How can we get you through this? Whether it was 2 weeks, whether it was 2 years.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. I carried my entire team. This is before the CARES Act, before the PPP, the payroll protection program. I carried my entire team on overhead or, funds that were not designated for payroll. But I carried the team for 3 weeks. That's all the money I had. And I said, hey, and this is when the unemployment was out there. And so people were leaving their employers in droves, taking the unemployment. And my discussion with the team was simply, I can pay you for the next 3 weeks to stay home. I don't know what's going to happen after that, but if you just stick with us for the next 3 weeks, we will hopefully have the fog will lift a little bit between now and then, and we'll have a clearer vision. And all but one stayed on the team, and lo and behold, the military called up and said, you're key and essential, and we need to come and conduct training. And so that worked out very well. But it was, I didn't know at the time when the governor said, everybody close your business in the state of Virginia. I didn't know how we were going to get through it, but I knew we would. I mean, every business in the state, every business in the country was in the same boat. And so there had to be a way to resolve it. And so I was very confident that, the whole thing would be resolved one way or another.
Right. And I think that's where we saw a lot of employees being very innovative. One of my favorite stories is one of the distilleries that, could not produce their scotch, their whiskey, their bourbon, their whatever it was. And they started producing hand sanitizer, because employees said, hey, there's a huge demand for this. We've got, what is it, $6 million man. We've got the technology.
Right.
And I think that was really what happened. And we saw that like in restaurants where people who said, I'm a server, but now I'm going to be a driver. And what if we start delivering meals, and all of these various things. And, I think what it showed was at varying points in time, people can be leaders just for a little point in time too. I'm going to lead this little effort, and then, and I think that's, manager is kind of a manager is a manager is a manager, right? But leaders kind of come and go as the situation deems needed.
Yeah. And the other thing leaders do is they inspire and they motivate, they energize. I'm big on energy. I'm a high energy leader. I'm a high energy guy. And I think it's important for leaders to energize their teams, energize those that you're in charge of. And the best way to do that is to show up with energy.
Right.
And so that's a key component for me anyway.
Right. And obviously you had to do that in the military, because people were not going to follow you into the situations where they were literally risking life and limb.
Yeah.
Without knowing that you were trustworthy, that you were putting yourself there first. I think that's one of the big things, and it doesn't matter where it is. When we see somebody who tells you go do this, but they're not willing to go do it themselves, we might do it. But in many cases, we're like, no.
Yeah. Or you're gonna look for someplace else to work.
Right.
You're turned off by that experience, and you're going to look for someplace else to work.
Right. And obviously the leader can't always be the first one in, but they can be, again, restaurants, during COVID, where there were the two types, there were the managers who went eek, and then there were the manager leader who said, I'm going to flip burgers. I'm going to be, and all of those things, because then we went, okay, they're willing to do this. I'm going to be willing to put forth also.
Yeah. And also the leader and or the manager, you have to distinguish which one you need to be in that moment as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So do I need to lead the team right now,
Mm-hmm.
or should I take more of a managerial or more team oriented role? And again, a very conscious leader thinks of those things. And those things are important because everybody's watching all the time. What's the boss going to do right now?
Right.
And they're going to follow the boss's lead one way or the other. If the boss is energetic and rolls up his or her sleeves and gets in there and says, let's make this happen, you're more likely to have.
It's hard to be lazy and slacking off when they, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then the other part of that, and again, I'm just speaking through my personal experience, but when you own a business, you don't have the option to quit. You don't have the option to go work somewhere else.
Right.
You've got to lead the organization in a way that keeps people on the team and keeps them motivated. So I just think that especially small to mid-sized businesses, which makes up 90% of commerce in America, small to mid-sized businesses, the leader has to really lead from the front, if you will, and be willing to do whatever is required for the organization to thrive.
Right. And I think we've all, been watching with, whatever it is that we're watching with Twitter, right? What is Elon Musk going to do today that's going to, and it has been very interesting to watch from a business perspective. Because, he bought this, it's his toy. He can do what he wants with it. I mean, that's one of the things that people, got a little up in arms about. I told somebody, they were like, oh my God, he fired everybody. How can he do that? I said, he owns it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it is his toy. He can do what he wants with it. But we also saw the fact that he let's be honest, he clearly struggles as a leader. He makes these unilateral decisions and doesn't explain why. Then he has to backtrack. And of course, what's coming out is just the some of the funniest things in the world, whether they're true or not. Like one of the ones that I saw the other day was he fired all the janitors. So now employees have to bring in their own toilet paper. I don't know if that's true or not, but you're thinking that's a pretty big morale thing. Or expecting them to sleep in their offices. No.
I don't know how much of that I believe, although he did sleep in his office. I mean, his office was his home,
right?
His computer lab when he built PayPal, him and his brother, that they lived where they worked.
Right.
That's his work ethic. And whether he tries to, transpose that onto everybody that works for him, I don't know. What I do know is that Elon Musk is an engineer, and I've worked with many engineers over the years.
They're very analytical
And very linear in their thought process, their reasoning, and the application of that. And he's probably the epitome of that, which has served the world well for the most part. But that doesn't mean that I was watching a documentary on him just a few days ago where he was interviewed, and the interviewer was like, oh, you're so brilliant, and how wonderful it must be to be Elon Musk and the life you live. And he says, I'm not so sure about that. He's like, I have this engineering mind and it drives me to do things. He said, I can't, I have all the money in the world, but I'm still driven. I can't just go sit on a beach and drink beer.
Does he take a vacation?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. And so he almost considers it a bit of a curse as well, for whatever that's worth.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned something that I think is real important is that he has this style of how he works. And, then does he force that on the other people who work with him? And I think we saw that a lot during COVID, during the lockdowns, when people, went, well, I'm working 24/7 because my computer is now in the other room. So you should be too. And I talked to a lot of people, and we interviewed people on the program too, where we said, okay, the first thing y'all need to do is have honest discussions about boundaries.
Yeah.
And I do that with my clients. I have had my own business for over 20 years. And I had that discussion long ago with my clients where, they would expect that because I home officed, I would work 24/7. Now, there's always emergencies, and so, but, and of course, time zones make things really wonkadoodle with some of these. You can't just say, well, I mean, you can say, I only do this time period to this time period. If it's outside that time period, whatever. But, I would tell my clients, I had one, I'm here on the East Coast. She was in California. She would expect me to respond at 7:30 p.m. because that was 4:30 p.m. for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, I'll tell you what, I won't expect you to respond at 4:30 a.m. because it's 7:30 a.m. for me. That she understood.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of had those discussions. And I also told them, I said, there are emergencies and I will work evenings, weekends, holidays, whatever, but it will cost you double. And they all went, ooh, it can wait till Monday. But as employees, I think that was where people really struggled to say, okay, I am not going to be working at 11 o'clock at night, or the opposite, to tell their boss, I work best at 11 o'clock at night. Can I do that? And then you tossed in the fact that a lot of people were dealing with homeschool kids, and
right.
so, doing something at say 10 a.m. when you had 3 little munchkins that also needed, and it was very difficult. And of course, leaders adapted. Managers went, this is not going to work.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would say there's a lot of truth to that. The biggest part of that, in my observation, my experience, is if your team members have high moral and ethical character, I don't care if you work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or from 5 p.m. to 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. It's task based, right?
Do you get the work done?
Just get the work done. And I don't want to micromanage when you do, how you do it. If you want to go throw in a load of laundry while you're working from home, go throw in a load of laundry. If you want to go mow the grass, go mow the grass. We just have to make sure that the work is done on time. And that's kind of evolved into a new concept as well, where personal time off, vacation days, things like that. Some organizations are no longer, they no longer have these strict HR guidelines that says, for every 8 hours you work, you earn, 3 minutes of vacation time or whatever. What they say is, and again, this small to mid-sized organizations is where it works the best, is you take the time you need. If you think you need 2 months, then you're not the right person for this company.
Right. Yeah.
But if you think you need 2 weeks, then go take 2 weeks. If you think you need 3 weeks, go take 3 weeks. Your work somehow has to be maintained, or whatever can wait for you to come back can wait for you to come back. But and that just creates, I think, an environment that empowers people. It makes them want to work more, not less. And if it doesn't make them want to work more, not less, then again, you have to look at the moral and ethical character of the individual and say, do I have the right person on the team?
Right. There's a couple more things from your book that I want to talk about. And one, and we were talking about this before the program, is not really discussed a lot. We all talk about leaders, but what we don't talk about is power. And we just really kind of alluded to that with Elon Musk. He owns the business, therefore he has the power. And can you be a leader without any type of power? And I don't mean, there's varying degrees of power. But can you be a leader and not have any power?
Good question. That's almost like a philosophical thing I'd have to think about. But the short answer is no. Leaders do have various types of power, and they have to know what type of power to exert in what situation. Just like a leadership style, what leadership style do I apply? What type of power should I apply in this situation? And it's very appropriate to apply power, informational power, for example. If I know something that other people want to know, they give me power. They give me recognition, if you will.
So your power is influence.
So influence for sure. That is ultimately, that's what you're trying to accomplish through any type of power, whether, we're talking about informational power, whether we're talking about referent power, the various types of power that you can exert. But you want to, you want to choose the instrument of power, we'll say, you want to choose the instrument of power very carefully and apply it appropriately. And just zooming out at the kind of the national level, there's 4 instruments of power that the U.S. uses as a matter of national security and foreign policy. And those are, the acronym is DIME. So diplomatic, informational, military, and economic. Now, that's not the order in which they're applied.
Right.
You know, the order would be diplomatic.
But it made
first.
a cute acronym.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And
exactly.
the government likes acronyms.
Yeah, and that's how you can remember that. So, but you apply one or more of those instruments of power given the particular situation. And so leading your organization is no different. You have instruments of power available to you. You need to know what they are and when to use them. And more importantly, when not to use them and be certain not to abuse them.
Right. Yeah. You know, and there are obviously the, you know, I am the owner power. I control money power. I can get you fired, hired, promoted power. But, you know, there is that, you know, as I was saying, you know, there is that influence, that diplomat where, you know, it's, and it might be, you know, I have the ear of somebody who is more important.
Absolutely.
You know, and I mean, it you know, and I think we see that a lot too. And that I think is sometimes one of the things, and as you said, you know, all these can be abused. You know, and you know, when I remember I had a discussion one time that was not going my way, you know, and you know, I was trying to convince this person, and she in essence told me, well, you know, I have lunch with the owner once a week. And so it was, you know, pretty much shut up. You're not going to win this discussion. But what happened was immediately I lost all respect for her.
For sure. Absolutely. So there's something called legitimate power. And, you know, owner, CEO, people know your title. They know who you are. And the last thing you ever want to do is have to remind people of that. If you have to remind them of that, then you're doing something wrong, or they're a terrible teammate and you just need to get rid of them. So, so legitimate power is just that. People know you have the title, you have the position. People are going to recognize that power for the most part. And if that's not working, then take a close look at what's really wrong, because there's something else. There's something else going on there.
Right. You know, and that's, I think, is the important thing, is to always be reevaluating everything. What worked? What
Leaders
didn't
have
work?
to. Absolutely.
You know, and you know, we all know
football coaches, hockey
cases,
coaches. We all do that.
We learn more from the failures, or we should, than our successes. You know,
absolutely. Again, Elon Musk is an example of that. Tesla was touch and go there for a while. Right. SpaceX, you know, he had they had the first 3 rockets blew up.
Yep.
He only had enough capital to launch that 4th rocket. And if that 4th rocket didn't work, SpaceX was done. But those first 3 launches, they learned and learned and learned to finally achieve success.
Right. You know, and sometimes what you learn is that ain't going to work.
That's right.
And that's
we're not doing that again.
Yeah. You know, and then you go from that. And as we said, you figure, okay, well, why didn't it work? You know, because there very easily can be, you know, something further down where it might apply. You know, did we not put enough resources? Did we not, you know, all of those various things.
You know, but you're bringing up a point that I think leaders often overlook. Why didn't that work? That could be a full day event for for you and your you know, your key people. It could be a 1-hour event, but if we don't focus on it and very consciously say, why didn't that work, and really kind of sketch that thing out, then we're missing an opportunity.
Right. And that definitely comes back to the fact that your employees, your staff, your whoever have absolutely got to be able to say why. You know, because if they think if I criticize something, I'm going to lose my job, they're certainly not going to say anything. You know, and so that's where, you know, a lot of times you'll see people bring in a coach, you know, something like that, and an outside consultant that can you know, kind of
very, very true. And quite simply, and again, this has been my experience, and I did it right here at iFLY in the early years. When trust is low, you have issues, you have terrible communication, you have people working against each other. And so that's what happens when trust is low. So people bring in a coach to try and mediate,
Right.
to try and get the best out of everybody. But the priority is reestablishing trust.
Right.
And if we can't do that with the people on the team, then find people who you can do it with. You have to have trust. And something you mentioned earlier, when the trust is very high, then people can come to me as the owner, as the CEO, and they can say, we don't think you're doing the right thing here. And rather than me react, in a hostile manner, I can just very reasonably say, tell me why. Tell me why you think that. At the end of the day, they're looking out for the best interest of the organization, of the people in the organization, and of themselves, right? In the Navy, we say shipmate, self. In that order.
Self is the last one.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with self-interest, but it's these other things come first. And so when you have high trust, you can have those discussions where we don't attack each other, but we debate the merits of certain ideas or concepts. And again, at the end of the day, the voices are heard. We pick a decision, and everybody moves in that cardinal direction.
Right. Now we're running low on time. Oh my gosh, we have to have you on again. But the other thing I really wanted to get into talking about here is the fact that, for you, and obviously, being a former Navy SEAL, this is very important. Health.
Navy EOD, not a Navy SEAL, but Navy EOD.
Yes, wrong one. And the health is so absolutely critical. And so talk to us about why, as a leader, you have to be very conscious of taking care of yourself.
Sure. So the science is very clear. In the second half of my book, which is what I call the science of leadership, I talk about 6 key components of health and wellness. And those 6 components are rest, hydration, nutrition, exercise, brain and heart health, or brain and heart link, and lifelong learning. And those 6 things, if you focus on each one of those touches, they all touch each other. Right. If I'm well rested and well hydrated and well nourished, I have a great exercise session, raises my heart rate appropriately and in a managed process and in a manner that doesn't shock the heart. The benefit to the brain and heart is tremendous. So I call it the general leadership law. Those 6 things are so interrelated that a change in one, positive or negative, will have a similar impact on all the other components. Right. What does that mean? What that means is if I show up to work and I'm not well rested, I'm not on my A game. And maybe it's not me who's well rested. Maybe it's my teammate sitting across the table from me who's not well rested. But whether it's me or my teammate, I have to recognize that. And then I have to recalibrate my expectations simply based on the fact that I'm dealing with a teammate who didn't sleep well last night or hasn't slept well in the last week or the last month.
And what's going on with that?
Exactly right. Exactly right. So we need to be well rested, well hydrated, well nourished, etc. These are things that throughout my entire adult life, I practice them, but not in a very deliberate and conscious way. And if you want to be a very good leader for a very long period of time, you have to pay attention to those 6 things on a daily basis. First and foremost for you. I call that mono. And then in the stereo, you have to enable that for your teammates. Hey, how come you're not well rested? Are you well hydrated? Everybody on my team gets a water bottle, a 32-ounce water bottle. It's something as simple as that. In terms of hydration, how much water should you consume every day, according to the American Academy of Health Science? Most people don't know the answer to that. Even if they do, then the next question is, how much water do you consume every day?
Not enough.
And most people don't know the answer to that. So something as simple. So being dehydrated is often compared to being malnourished or
it slows everything down in your body.
Right, exactly, including what's called executive function, right? And I simplify executive function into the ability to see, to hear, and to think. The more clearly I can see, the more clearly I can hear, the more clearly I can think, the more accurately and the more quickly I can make the proper decision. And that's all a matter of health and wellness. And health and wellness is kind of, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, has become very visible and practiced, and it should be, but leaders don't pay enough attention to health and wellness. So the whole second half of my book is dedicated to just that. How much water do you drink? How much should you drink? How much sleep should you get? How much do you get? Rest, hydration, nutrition. 70% of chronic disease in America is caused by poor nutrition. Type 1, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, which I am guilty of high cholesterol. These are things that affect your ability to lead. They take you out of the driver's seat. You don't have as much control and as much mental clarity and as much energy as you would like to. So if you really want to be a great leader over a long period of time and do the best you can for everybody, you have to pay attention to what I call the science of leadership.
Right. And again, you're setting that example. We talked about Elon Musk sleeping in his office and expecting others to. There's no way you get good rest, when that happens. Plus, if you're not with your family, all of those various things. We all see the break rooms. That's one of the things I miss. I don't have a break room. I have a kitchen, but does your break room have lots of junk food, or does it have healthy food?
Exactly.
Now, we need a little junk food. You give me a little piece of chocolate, I'm a happy camper. But I'm fine with a little piece of chocolate as opposed to 4 pieces of cake. Or do you see the leader take a walk at lunch? Just all of those various things.
Yeah. That's right. And the food in the break room is a great example. So there might be a little sweet something here or there, but for the most part, I think that organizations should put healthy and nutritious and energizing foods in there. And then it's up to the person whether or not they want to eat that food or bring in their own. Oftentimes they'll bring in their own, which is more nutritious and more healthy. And hopefully not the opposite. And these are things, it's just food. Something as simple as your food choice can set up your day for high energy and high activity, or it can set up your day to put you in what's called a trough, where I can barely get anything done. I've eaten this big meal that's high in carbohydrates, and it's putting me to sleep, and I can't focus.
The turkey coma.
Yeah, right. Exactly. My energy is low. I mean, something as simple as that, we can consciously and deliberately manage. And if we do, at 5 o'clock, we go, wow, it's 5 o'clock already, as opposed to, man, it's only 2 o'clock.
Right.
So that's a big part of what it means to either lead an organization or be on a team within an organization.
Right. Yeah. I worked somewhere one time where they thought this was the greatest thing in the world. They installed an espresso machine. And then, and everybody thought that was great fun. And about two in the, everybody went thud. But then they'd have more. And I mean, it was just, and of course the problem was when people got so amped up, they started making mistakes. So we took the coffee machine away, and we were in Colorado, and so what's in Colorado, sleepy time tea, Celestial Seasonings is there, and so we brought in a lot of herb tea, and it was funny because they went, oh, herb tea, but they discovered that really was something that was going to help them.
Yeah, and again, if you look at the physiology behind it, there's something called heart rate variability. So caffeine is going to accelerate your heart rate. That acceleration could be jagged and irregular, or it could be linear and smooth. And and that affects how you respond to situations.
Right.
So you could have smooth acceleration on the gas pedal, smooth braking, or you could have jagged, rough acceleration and jagged and rough braking. And that's your heart I'm talking about. And that affects your ability to see, to hear, to think, and ultimately perform and make decisions.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Bob, we didn't even talk about DEI. I think that's a very important thing to discuss in
chapter
leadership.
6, a whole chapter dedicated to it.
Several things that we are in my notes that we didn't get to. So that just means we have to have you on again.
Happy to.
But, until then, how do people, so talk about both businesses because
sure.
You have the two. So how do people find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Sure. So my core business, if you will, is iFLY Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving. And the book Elevate Your Leadership was a natural progression from a course I developed called Elevate Your Leadership. And that course incorporates the flight experience. So you do indoor skydiving, you face your fear, you face the anxiety, you do something that's not everybody does. And you step outside of your comfort zone, and ultimately your comfort zone expands, right? Tony Robbins has people walk across hot coals, which I've heard great things about. I haven't done it myself. And I present people with this flight experience. So that was the genesis. So iFLY Virginia Beach Indoor Skydiving is one pathway to track me down. But we also do the full day event at iFLY. So Elevate Your Leadership is a full day seminar at iFLY Virginia Beach. Teams of 12 to 15 are ideal. We incorporate the flight experience, and then we go through a facilitated discussion on all things leadership, much like what we talked about today. RobertPizzini.com. So Robert, Pizzini.com is my website. And you can learn way more about me than you would care to. But more importantly, you can learn about the offerings and the programs and the events and the timelines and the things that we do. But
and your podcast, you've got a great podcast.
Thank you. So I do. On that website, you'll find links to purchase my book. You'll find links to my blog. You'll find links to my podcast, and it's a blessing to be on your podcast. And I'm just going to plug mine for a second. I have had some incredible guests, incredible discussions, and just like your podcasts inform your listeners and make them want to do good things, mine will do the same. So thank you, Deb, for mentioning that.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been a great discussion, and as I said, we need to have you on again to continue it. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Sure. I would say that if you want to change things, if you want to have more energy and more mental clarity, you have to approach it very deliberately. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. It just takes your time. It takes your attention. You have to pay attention to those 6 things every day. Rest. Did I sleep well? If not, why? If yes, why? What conditions did I set up for great sleep or not so great sleep? So all these things are in my book. All these things will help you be the best leader you can be.
I love it. Well, I've been having such a great discussion with Robert Pizzini. I'm Deb Creer, and until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.